students. Today I'm going to be demonstrating some basic Mecanim animations using Mixamo. So what we have here is a basic scene, just a cube on a green plane. It has the ability to move forward and backwards using the vertical axis. It can rotate left and right using the horizontal axis, jumping using add force on the rigid body. And we also have a crouch ability and a attack ability set up, but those are going to be animations only, so we can't see it on the cube. So it's only got one script written, and that is the player controller. We can see this is some pretty standard. Got my movement, jumping, attack, and crouching are just a key code. And then this is a very standard transform, translate, transform, rotate, add force. There is an on collision to show if the player has touched the ground again. This is preventing double jumping. But let's go ahead and move over to Mixamo. Let's pick out some animations. So I've got this quick, simple character here. He's just called Basic Guy, and I'm just going to get a few animations downloaded here. Let's do a basic idle. So I've got this one that's pretty good. I'm going to download it. Since this is my first one, I'm going to make sure that I do it with the skin. And that's going to download. Let's go ahead and do another one that is a walk animation. Just grab a simple one there. Now on this one I want to click in place because I'm going to let my scripting do the movement. I don't need the animation to do the movement. So I'm going to download that one. This one I don't need the skin, I just need the animation. And then let's go ahead and grab a jumping animation. Now for this one, I want my jump to be quick, so I'm going to trim it a little bit. There, that looks pretty good. I'm going to download that. I might have to trim it some more later on. Let's see, we've got idle, walk, jump. Let's do a punch. That'll be my attack, and again, I don't need the skin for this one. And one more, let's do a crouch. We'll see if we can get there. It's already getting kind of late. Without the skin. Okay, so now let me go to, I'm gonna move this to the side, and let's move Unity in. Let's go to my downloads. Here they are. There's all 5 of those animations, so I'm gonna go over here, and I am going to create a folder for my models. Whenever I'm using Mecanim, I tend to get a lot of files, so I'm going to create a folder specifically for my model here, Basic Guy. And now I'm going to just drag all of these in like that. And there we go. I've got all of my models and animations set up. Now what I want to do is find the idle animation, this one right here, and I'm going to use this model as my player. So I can go ahead and just delete this block that I was using as a player. And I'm going to take Basic Guy. Before I drag him in, I want to go to the rig and say that the avatar definition is created from this model. I'm going to apply it, and then that gives me Basic Guy idle avatar. And that's going to make it so the animator works well. But I can take Basic Guy and just drag him in. And oh, I messed up a little bit when I exported this guy from Blender. I forgot to remove the camera and the light. So in order for me to remove that, I'm just going to go to the prefab, let's unpack it, and let's get rid of the camera. And let's get rid of the light. And then actually while I'm here, these were some reference images that I did in Blender, so I'm just going to delete these empties. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to go to my scripts. I'm just going to add the player controller script to my guy, and let's change this to player. Now if that worked properly, I need to set these fields. So the move speed, let's say 5, turn speed is 180, jump force, let's say 5, the jump key is, let's say it's space, the attack key I like to use left control. Crouch key, let's do C, crouch. And if I push play, I should be able to move around. Okay, there I am. I'm moving, rotating, looks good. Now if I jump, I should get a little bit of an error. I'm jumping right now, that's not working. The reason that's not working is because I don't have my box collider and my rigid body. Let me add a rigid body and a box collider. And before I go any further, let's edit that box collider. I'm going to go into orthographic view. And give you a quick edit there. And that looks like it'll do. So there we go. I can turn, I can jump. That's looking okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the animation. On the player, if I'm looking here, when I created the avatar, it automatically added an animator with the idle avatar in there. So if you didn't do it that way, you would add the component to get the animator there. I do need an animation controller. So I like to put my animation controllers in their own folder. And I'm just going to create an animation controller. I'm going to call this Basic Guy AC. Going back to the player, it's asking for an animation controller here, so I'm going to drag this in. And let's look at the animation controller. I can do that by double-clicking. And right here I want to add in my idle animation. So if I go back to my models, basic guy, here's my idle, and if I open that up, I get all of the pieces of him, including his idle animation. I'm going to drop that in, and this should start playing the idle animation. Okay, so I see I've got a little bit of movement there, but then he stops. The reason for that is because the idle animation is not looping. So I'm going to open up this animation and edit it. And the thing that I'm looking for here is loop time. So I'm just going to check off loop time. Really important that I click apply. It won't work until I click apply. And now I should have some very basic movement right here. He's idling. Okay, easy enough. Now let's go ahead and move that to running, walking. So if I go back to the animator screen, I'm going to add the walking animation. And before I go any further, walking is one that I want to loop, so let's edit this animation. Let's add looping time on that. Now in order for me to go from idle to walking, I need to create a transition, right click, make a transition, And I do want my character to be able to go from walking back to idling, so let's make a transition back. In order to trigger these transitions, I need to create a parameter. Excuse me. So, the parameter that I'm going to make here is going to be a float that I'm going to call vertical input. And this is going to be tied to the vertical input that's on my script. But basically, vertical input on the keyboard is going to be a value between 1 and -1. So, if the vertical input is greater than 0, we should be going from idling to walking. So I'm on this transition from idle to walking. I added a condition. In order to go back, I'm going to say that the vertical input should be less than, and I don't want to say less than 0, I want it to be go back to idle when it is 0, so I'm going to say less than 0.1. Now, I need to get that to my character through the script, so let me bring my script back. First of all, this is the first time I'm using the animator, so I have to declare the animator. I'm going to make a spot right here for animation, and I'm going to say I have a public animator called Animator. Now in my components, right here, this is where I got my rigid body. I'm going to get my animator component. Same way, get component, animator. Now I'm going to go down to where I start moving. And right here, this is where I've got my forward and backward movement. I've got my vertical axis. That's good. And then just right here, right after I do the move, I want to set my vertical input parameter to the value of this vertical input variable. So I'm just going to say the animator has the ability to set the float that I just did. And the float in there, first thing I'm going to do is say its name. So the name was vertical input. And what I want to set it to is whatever the value of vertical input is. So I'm going to put vertical input right there. And again, this first vertical input is the one that lives in the animator. That's the parameter. This vertical input is the one that lives in my script. So just Control S to save, and I should be able to see some effect here. So here I am, I'm idling, I can turn, and then when I walk, I should see, there he goes, he's walking. Now you should have noticed that there is a little bit of a delay, and we can fix that. When I go to my animator, right here, going from idle to walk, this box right here says has exit time. That means that it finishes the animation. I want to uncheck that because I want to go directly in. Same thing with going back. So now I can move forward and it looks pretty smooth, and then I stop and it stops. Problem here, if I go backwards, it doesn't move, and the reason for that is that's because vertical input is negative at that point. So I'm just going to make a quick change to my script. Instead of vertical input, I want the absolute value of vertical input, so I'm going to go mathf.abs for absolute value vertical input, and that is going to make it the absolute value of the vertical input. So if I push play here, now I can move forward, and when I move backward, he still walks. And this is actually a forward walking motion when I'm moving backwards, so he looks like he's moonwalking, but at this point, that's okay. Alright, let's move on to jumping. So, in my animator, I want to grab the jumping animation, so I'm going to open this up. Let me grab jumping and put it in here. Now, the jumping animation should activate if I am not on the ground. So I'm going to add a bool called isOnGround. And That's the same name that I used for the one in my script. So I should be able to go from idle to jumping, and then back to idle. I should be able to go from walking to jumping, but I don't necessarily need to go from jumping to walking. So from idle to jumping, I don't want exit time, and I want that to happen if is on ground is false, and then go back if is on ground is true. Same thing with walking. We should go from walking to jumping if is on ground is false. Okay, let's go back to the script. Go here to jumping, and right here, this is where we see that is on ground turns false. So all I have to do here is say animator.set bool, and the first thing I do is say the name of the parameter is on ground, followed by the name of the variable is on ground. Okay, now this is when is on ground is false, so I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to move this down to where is on ground is true. So this is just two different spots where I'm communicating with the animator. Control S to save, and I'm just going to go through here before I do this. I'm going to turn off exit time on each of these, and let's push play and see what happens. Okay, I'm walking, and let's jump. Okay, so this is a little bit wonky because the animation is very quick, and it looks like he's landing before he does, and that's something that I can tweak later on, but for right now I'm okay with it. Let's move on to something else. Oops. Okay, let's do a punching animation. So here's my punching, and I'm going to grab the punching animation. And just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to only make a transition from idle to punching. So of course I should have a walking to punching transition, but just to save time, I'm not going to do that right now. Now this one, I'm going to use a trigger. I'm going to call the trigger attack. Now trigger is kind of like a bool, except it's going to happen once and then not again. So if I say do the punch if attack, you'll notice there's no spot here to make any adjustment. And then what I need to do is make the transition back, and that's going to say go ahead and attack and then come back, so I don't actually have to add a condition on this one. I don't have any scripting here, but this is really simple. After jumping, I'm going to add an attack script, and all I have to do is say if input.getKey down attack key, then we're just going to trigger the animation. So the animator dot, and this was a trigger, so I'm going to set trigger attack. That's just going to fire off that animation once, and once the animation's complete, it's going to move back to the idle animation. So I'm pushing Control S to save it, and oops, closed too many things. Let's go ahead and push play. I see, okay, I'm moving, and then my attack key was left control, so I'm going to push that, and there he goes. Now, it's a little delayed, I don't like that, and that has to do with exit time again. So going from idle to punching, I do not want exit time, but then coming back, I do want exit time because I want the animation to complete. Okay, so now if I push control, you see he punches right away, finishes the animation, and then goes back to idling. Okay, one last animation. Let's do a crouch. So I'm going to add, for crouch, I'm going to use a boolean, I'm going to say is crouching. And right now it's false. That's good. Let's get the crouching animation. And again, to save time, we're just going to do it from idling and then back. So to go here, I do not want exit time, and the condition is crouching is true, go there, and then if is crouching is false, then come back. Okay, let's go back to our script. And for crouching, I have this variable here just for crouch key, and I forgot I need to have a bool called is crouching. And that's initially going to be false. So right here under my attack, I'm going to add a crouch. And I'm going to say if input.getKey. Now notice here that I'm using getKey and not getKeyDown. GetKeyDown is going to return true on the first frame that you press a key. GetKey is going to return true every frame that you have the key pressed. So this is going to be used for if I'm holding the key down. And I'm going to say crouch key, which is C in my script. So if I'm pressing crouch key, then is crouching is true. But if I'm not, so I'm going to do an else, then is crouching is false. After I do this bit right here, I want to go and communicate with the animator. Animator.setBool is crouching, lowercase is crouching, to is crouching. Okay, now that should do it. Let's go ahead and go back to Unity. And if I'm looking here, I'm going to hold down Control. Oops, not Control, that was the punch. I'm going to hold down C. There he goes, he's got a crouch, and then as soon as I let go of C, he should pop back up. 3, 2, 1, then back down. Okay, now if I tap C very quickly, I'm noticing that he's staying down, which you should be able to figure out. That's because I didn't do exit time on these. So exit time goes in, but it doesn't come out, so I'm just going to adjust that, and now I get a nice, I can move and I can crouch, and if I keep on tapping crouch, he'll do it quickly, but if I hold crouch, he'll stay crouched. Alright, that's some basic animations, and hopefully you can adjust this to meet your needs, take it a little bit further. Thank you for watching.